Hello. Normally, of course, I'm on the main stage and I say good morning, and automatically when I stand in front of people I say good morning, despite the fact that it is actually a different time of day. So let me say good afternoon. There was a slight lag there, wasn't there? Don't worry, we're going to do lots of talking. There's going to be lots of chance for conversation. It's the last session of the day, obviously. Thank you very much for staying. I appreciate you staying. I appreciate you also coming to this session, which obviously, don't tweet this, Kate, is the most important session of the entire conference. Thank you for seeing it. It's the most important one because obviously we can have all the technology we want. We can have all the learning we want, not everything else, but unless we have the skills in the team to put it to work in the organization, everything can fall apart at the last hurdle. So, what we're talking about today is getting the right skills into an L&D team and making sure we've got the right team for the future. We've got three speakers. I'm going to do some background, and then we're going to have Paul Morgan from O2. Paul's going to be talking about some changes that he's been influential in making within his team. In a large organization, large changes in a large team. Zoe Ferdinand of Capita will also be talking about the changes she's made in a large organisation, but it's a smaller team. She'll be talking about some detailed look at how she's taken two people from one particular role and moved them to another role. What did she do to give those people the skills that she thought they needed to be useful in that team for the future vision she saw for the team? So the idea with these, as always, with these talks, when we have three people talking, is that we have chunks of talking, lots of Q&A, lots of interaction, and different viewpoints which enable you, hopefully, to get an angle on your issues that you've got at work and help you solve your problems. Let me explain briefly who I am, because you might know me as the bloke who heads up learning technologies, but I've been in the learning and the training game for the past, actually I can't remember how long, all my working adult life, since the mid-80s when I started as a trainer. And I've always been in learning, always been in technology. I've done everything from being a stand-up trainer to being someone who set companies up and sold them, to being project management, content development, operations, chairman of the board. I'm lucky enough now to chair this conference and also to chair the Learning and Performance Institute, which I'll tell you about a bit later on. Well, I won't tell you about the institute, but I'll use some of our data later on. It's a professional institute for working L&D professionals. And so the reason for talking about that background is that I've lived my life in this field and I've seen a great number of changes since the good old days when I alluded to this morning, when you could be an Excel 3 trainer, you could do everything, standing up and talking, you were the fount of all knowledge, and at the end of the day, 5:30, you collected up your 3.5-inch floppy disks, your acetates for the OHP projector, I'm not joking, you put them all in your bag and you drive off because you were the guru who travelled from place to place with knowledge in your head. And of course it's not like that anymore, but very often the models that we use, and importantly the models people expect from us, are based around that model because it's what people are used to hearing from the first 17 years of their lives. That's how we learn. We sit down, we listen to the guru. Now, it's not like that anymore. There's lots, as we've heard at this conference, that's changed, and I think we need to change our teams, skills in the teams as well, in order to deal with it. And I also think within L&D we need to be looking at perhaps a change of attitude. I'm not going to deal with that right now, but perhaps we'll come to that later on. Right. I never like to talk too much because I always think that then enables you to settle back, especially in the tiring last session of the day. I asked everybody to sit next to each other because I was going to ask a question. I'm going to ask three questions actually. One now, one in the middle of what I'm going to say, and then one right at the end, which I hope will precipitate a discussion and enable you to gather your thoughts together and go to the office tomorrow ready to build an entirely new L&D team. So let me move on to our first question, which of course in traditional style I'm going to ask you to turn to a person next to you and discuss. And the question is this: you're here probably for a good reason. What's driving it? What's driving the need for L&D skills change in your organisation? Or if it's not skills change, the need for change in your team and your organisation. So are you happy? Great. If you're happy, let the world know it. If you think there's a need for change, please share it with the person next to you. Go ahead. All right. You know I hate to stop a conversation, but oh, that's great. Look, you know, sometimes I feel I should just go back and just let you have the valuable conversation, but I want to keep things moving. So any people want to share any thoughts about what's driving change? 2 or 3 words? It's the end of the conference. We all know each other by now. Yes?
From my perspective, of course, in military engineering, it's operational imperative now we've drawn down from Afghanistan.
Right.
We're not producing the ammunition technicians, bomb disposal
right? So you've got, I mean, not everybody's just come out of Afghanistan, but you've faced a change in what you're doing,
Yes.
in your circumstances, and therefore you've got to change what the organisation, what you're doing to meet the needs of the organisation. Yeah, which might be something that other people are facing as well.
That's close.
Thank you. It's probably somebody from HR should be saying that's a nightmare and we shouldn't be doing that. Anybody else want to, yeah, go on.
Change, basically. Change itself is driving the need for
Change.
the skills that we have.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
What sort of change?
changing our environment,
Yeah.
changing the customer base, changing the talent coming through, their expectations, complexity generally, and even just getting people comfortable with complexity and understanding that, I guess, it's a good thing. You know, it's partly attitudinal, it's partly the skills that you need to deal with that.
Yeah. And we do talk about, don't we, about a VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous, and it just seems things are changing so fast you never have a chance to get to the stage where you know which way is up. So same deal. I mean, that's a specific example of change, but change here as well. Yeah.
Actually, strategic change in how we do delivery. Previously, delivery would be very traditional face-to-face, and we've moved much more into 70-20-10 modality, learning, and we've got to actually update the L&D skills.
So okay, so you've moved from face-to-face, but what made you move from face-to-face?
Cost. It was
Right.
unsustainable cost-wise. We couldn't physically sustain the financial cost. We couldn't sustain
The opportunity cost, yeah.
The opportunity cost release of the business
Right.
to do that.
Yep.
Yeah, basically the skills from our learning coordinators becoming learning community managers.
Huh.
Because we try to do some e-learning stuff which is based on communities, or we try to get
Right.
our target groups more to communities, and the coordinator is not just organising.
Yeah.
those,
It's more than just someone who's
training
administrating.
sessions, but
Yes.
organising those
Communities.
groups
Yeah.
and encourage them to really collaborate.
And I think we'll come back to them. Very last one at the back, sir.
Technology. The constant evolution of technology.
So what is that, changing the department or changing the organisation?
Changing the organisation.
Right. And so why do you have to respond?
Because that's what the people want.
Curse them. And they're right to want it, and I'm afraid we have to service them, whether we like it or not. You know, I'd love to have this conversation, because I think there are lots of things that are going on that are different reflections, different facets of the same cause. Ultimately, the change is being driven, I reckon, mostly by the internet and what's gone on in the world, and we're desperately trying to catch up. But take Sucker, it's not just us. All over the world, different people in different industries are facing the same issue, whether it's publishing, music, or whatever. Everyone's waking up to the fact that the internet is about as significant as the steam engine in completely transforming everything about society and the economy, and we just have to change with it. Let me then say, right, okay, if we're going to change, what do we need? We need some way of looking at what skills we've got. So I'm going to just quickly talk about model, very quickly, because whenever you talk about a model, there's always a caveat you have to bear in mind, which is the great caveat from George Box, who is a fantastic statistician, very bright guy. He looks like a nice cuddly uncle there in his cardigan, and he says, all models are wrong, but some are useful. And that's true on two levels. Firstly, by the way, he's a statistician with an intensely great mind for working out great details. Also worked out, and I think this was just for a joke, with a colleague called Cox, the Box-Cox model. I don't know what it's about, but I just think it's worth knowing. So he's also the originator of the Box-Cox model. All models are wrong, but some are useful. So I'm going to just talk quickly about one model which has come from the Institute, but there are other models as well. Models aren't the truth, in the sense that we can't ever know the territory. The map is not the territory. Even if you could map the territory one-to-one, have a bit of paper that showed exactly where everything was, it still wouldn't be quite right, because context changes everything. So a model that reflects one reality doesn't reflect the other reality in quite the right way. Having said that, we need some tools to understand what's going on. So here are some of the tools. ATD have a competency model. That's ASTD as was. CIPD in the UK have a model. And in the middle, we've got the LPI, which doesn't actually have a handy diagram. That's the front page of the report, which is our capability model. And this just describes the skills of the learning and development function. What we've done is we've gone out, we've done some research across the industry, and we've come up with 27 skills which we think are essential for every department. And they're grouped into 9 groups. And there are 4 levels. It's very simple. The idea is always, for me, that if you're going to have a model, it's got to be simple enough to be usable, but complex enough to be useful. So simple enough to be usable, complex enough to be useful. That URL at the bottom, you've got to get the capitalization right. And by the way, on everything, Twitter, LinkedIn, and so on, I'm Donald H. Taylor. So if you want to contact me afterwards and say, I didn't get that right, just Twitter me, email me, and I'll get it to you. I say email, Gmail. So with this report, we got the report out in 2013. I'm going to show you the results from 2015, and I'm going to show you the interesting, very quick comparison between what we found in 2013 and 2015. So what did we find looking at the skills that people have got? Well, I'm not going to tell you, because I'm going to ask you a question first, because I think it sounded like I was about to launch into a long look-through report, which would have been very dull. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to ask you this question. Where have you got lots of skills? Where have you got fewer skills? And what skills do you need to succeed? Just very quickly, and then I'm going to ask you for some one-word answers. So talk to your neighbour for 30 seconds about this, please. All right. Okay, guys, I'm trying to keep everything moving, so I hate stopping people talking. This is great. 1, 2, let's count. 3, 4, 5. I think for a room this size, 5 people is fantastic. 5 clicks is fantastic. So, what skills do we need? What skills are you crying out for? Anybody?
Yeah, we've got a shortage of consultancy skills.
Right. What sort of consultancy?
The ability to effectively business partner with the leadership team.
Gap there.
And say no.
Okay. And say no. Yes. Okay. And do you have too much of anything?
Me personally, or?
No, not you personally. that was, you know, we're all chums, but that might have been a little bit intrusive.
We have too many traditional classrooms.
Okay, yeah. You were very calm there, given I could have been very intrusive on your personal space. I thought you handled that very well. No.
Because I'm a traditional classroom.
You can handle anything. Fantastic. Any other things we've got too much of or too little of?
Graphical design.
What, do you need more or you need less?
We need more.
More graphical design?
Yes.
Need less?
Well, I'm not saying less, but we use the classical trainers
Yeah.
to maybe more complex training or
Okay.
than the basic.
The basic stand up and deliver knowledge, yeah.
In a way, it's the opposite. We
Huh.
do pretty well on the business consultancy
Oh.
side. We stripped out trainers a while ago. We've got doing development performance consultants, but in the social space, the social enterprise space, they don't get it. They're kind of willing and interested, but not. It's like silence. It's like tumbleweed. So in terms of like connecting the business, social groups, collaboration, sharing,
Right.
that kind of stuff, curating.
Curating. Similar sort of thing you were talking about, the collaboration, the curation skills. Yes, there was a hand over here? Yeah.
We've got an excess of people that can upload content to our learning management.
Please, somebody tweet that. Okay.
So the overall quality is actually quite poor.
Right.
Very little quality control.
Perhaps you need somebody who's a bit more discerning and can say no. Again, I love that line. Yeah, quickly.
We have excess demand for training.
Oh, when you say training, what does that mean?
We cannot cope with the demand. So
Right.
We have too much demand.
Okay. Do they need the training or do they just want it?
They need it.
They need it as well. Okay, well, that's a good position.
Yeah, it is, but it also needs us to do something about it.
So you need to find ways of coping with that is efficient. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, okay. Very quickly, yeah?
Similar problem is when the training is perceived as a perk.
Yeah,
So they come in because the gurus are in the company, they want to be trained by those gurus.
yeah. They want to touch the guru, don't they?
Yeah.
They want to be with the guru.
Too much attached to the formal aspect.
Yeah, yeah. And quickly over here, then we'll wrap up.
I guess something the gentleman mentioned earlier, change management itself,
Yeah.
being able to innovate, create, think outside the box.
Yeah.
We've got a problem right now within our team is that we get very comfortable with the traditional methods, being able to challenge and, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to come back to that right at the end about being comfortable with traditional stuff. Okay. If I forget, just say Hillman Hunter. Okay, and that will remind me what I'm supposed to say. Okay. That does make sense. Don't worry. All right, I'm going to go through some of those results. So we've seen a mishmash of different skills that people think they need there, but I think there are some common underlying things. Basically, the traditional skills that I was talking about that I used to do all the time, we don't need those so much anymore. We do need some new skills. And I think I like that point about the need to say no and really understand the business curation as well. What did our people say? I've just gone through the results of nearly 2,000 people assessing themselves against this framework, looking at where they think they're strong, where they think they're weak. What do the results show us? Well, what do you think the highest ranked skills are? I'm not going to ask you to shout this out, but bearing in mind, this is a scale of 1 to 4. If you're 4, you cannot get any better. So these people think they're very, very good. This is the average score. The average score of the 2,000 people who chose to rate themselves against this skill. Because you don't have to. There are 27 skills. You might rate yourself against 1. But if you do, of the people who rated themselves, the average score was 3.4. So people think they're fantastic. What are the highest ranked skills? It's going to come as no surprise. Face-to-face, presentations, and content design, right? Now, it's not necessarily a bad thing. We do need some of that stuff, and it's where we've come from as an industry. But it does rather echo the point in the room, Don, we've got a bit too much of this stuff. It's not we don't like it. I'm a classroom trainer myself inside. What were the lowest ranked skills? Anybody want to shout anything out? Well, actually, you already have in the answers you've given. Lowest ranked skills, information architecture, collaborative skills, and communities of practice, which have already come up as things we want people to be able to do. So we don't think we've really got the skills out there, unfortunately, for that. Now, here's the weird thing. I said I just looked at these skills for 2,000 people, nearly. This is what, I'm not expecting you, by the way, you didn't have too much to drink last night. I'm not expecting you to read this. But look at the pattern. If it's red, it's a low number. If it's white, if it's a middle number. And if it's green or dark green, it's a high number. This shows how many people rated themselves against each skill at each level. And that was the pattern, okay, in 2013. And you can see we have a cluster here, and the cluster is live delivery, classroom stuff, okay? So that's where we think we're hot. I was very concerned when we put our 6-month report out. Are we just dealing with a bunch of people who are abnormally not part of the normal population? It's the first people coming through. I don't mean abnormal, you're not abnormal. They're not representative of the population. And so we left it. And I thought, well, I went back. Let's have a look at it again for this conference. And you're the first people to see this research. What did it look like when we had 2,000 people spread over 30 months? And the answer is it looked almost exactly the same. So it was not skewed. It's extraordinary. The distribution's almost exactly the same. I thought, well, are we just getting live trainers? No, we're not. Right? The live trainers are there. They're represented throughout the population. The only major change there is that the average level of skill in 2015 is slightly higher than in 2013. Of 27 skills, the average has gone up for 23 of them. So in other words, everyone thinks they're a bit smarter now than they did 30 months ago. Go figure. All right. What are the least popular skills? The fewest people vote themselves on these 7 skills. And for me, the key one that people are not good at is this one here. It sounds wishy-washy, but actually for me this is the most important one. This is where we're having communication and understanding the rest of the business, and we're not doing it well. So it's not just that we're not doing it well, because we get a low score on that, but also there are very few people. So not many people do it, and the people that do it don't do it well. All right. So I'm posing a question to you. We've had a good conversation. There is another question, but I'm not going to ask that to you now. This is what I want you to think about. How are you going to develop the skills you need? I don't have the answer. I've set the background. Fortunately, the people who've been able to do this and to make a shift are sitting in the front row here. So I'm going to hand you over to the first of our case studies, Paul Morgan of O2. He's going to talk us through his story of improving the skills of his department, and then we're going to come back to that question at the end after Zoe's had her contribution as well. Paul.
Thank you, John. Good afternoon. So I'm here to talk specifically about how we as O2 have changed the knowledge and the attitudes of people in our team, and then I will hand over to Zoe. So who am I? I'm an individual that's not from a traditional L&D background. Most of my career started in IT. I was an IT administrator. I was a kind of architect to move from mainframe systems to Windows. I then moved to Aslan and then to Microsoft, basically dealing with marketing, vendor management, finance, etc., and then selling training to external parties and delivering training to external parties. So when I came into this industry about 15 months ago, I was struck by, I thought training was training, but it was interesting as to the industry that had been created within L&D that I kind of actually wasn't in touch with. So I moved to O2 15 months ago. I was tasked with helping the organisation reorganise, understand in terms of how we can actually drive value from training. And then about 7 months ago, once we'd actually organised in terms of how we were going to do transformation, I then took over this role. So what is this role and what do we have to do? So some people will be quite surprised that we actually have 7,500 people in the UK within O2, and that does not include the people that about a year and a half ago we outsourced our sales and service function to Capita. So what do we deal with? We're responsible for all of the learning platforms, and we're responsible for all elements of design, build, and deliver. Our customers are incredibly varied. Operations, that's everything from cybersecurity, IT, networks, that side. We've got HR, finance, and procurement. We've got business, marketing, consumer, and digital. Sales and services, retail. Plus, it's all the channels that support end-to-end customers from online to phone and in retail. And then finally, we have to support partners. So Tesco's Mobile are a customer of ours, and Capita. So we have a pretty big job to do in a fairly diverse industry with limited resource and limited funds. So the key role, and this is a really key point. When I moved into this role, people were confused as to why we are here. We are here to solve business problems. I'm not here to solve Freddie at selling a particular solution or Freddie's skills. Okay? I'm here to support consultancy, delivery solutions, training to solve particular business problems in all of those areas, and they are very, very diverse. So let me explain the journey. About 18 months ago, 2 years ago, the size of the L&D team in O2 was 120 people. Okay? Then it was 75, and then it was 62. The real interesting thing was that actually between 120, it used to be in the business. Very traditional, in the business, all the L&D people within the business doing whatever they wanted to do, building content, uploading content, designing content, delivering content. Right? I would call it as, you know, some really successful things, but a bit like anarchy, right? But it worked, right? It was a business that had a lot of money and actually really was actually driving the market forward. When I joined, it was 72 people. And out of the 72 people, there were 36 job roles, right? It's a little, right? Because over time, people start inventing roles. I'm a senior consultant of consultant within learning division of division and e-learning, you know, and this thing just expands because it's not many people actually understand the world of L&D, right? And understanding in terms of what roles you want to do. So we then moved to 62 people, and we're now at 40 people, right? And we're actually more efficient, and we drive more value from 40 people than 120 people, right? How? So the one thing not coming from an L&D background, members of my team are here in this audience, will tell you that diversity is key. I meet a lot of people, back to Don's comment, models, 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 4-tier model of evaluation, model of how to drive, you know, assessment, etc. Throw that out the window, right? You know, we are dealing in a very diverse industry, IT, operations, HR, finance. Get diverse people in your business and in your L&D function that have the right attitude, aptitude, skill set, and they can learn the rest, okay? So secondly, back to my point of having 36 job roles out of 72 people, right? We really need, and I needed to simplify what we were and who the business engaged with. So we went from 36 job roles to 4, okay? So the 4 job roles now are an L&D manager, a learning partner that consults with the business, a learning consultant, and a learning specialist, right? We have a few specialized roles within the actual digital learning function, but that is it, right? There is no confusion as to who does what, and it's really easy to tell 7,500 people what the business does and actually how they work. You then, you know, I've heard a lot at this conference in terms of, you know, do we need capability, do we need skill, do we need knowledge, Do we need aptitude? You need all of these things, but actually the skills and the abilities of the people you have, they have to have some knowledge of the area. They don't have to be, in my view, an L&D expert. They have to understand the language that they're working in, and they have to understand in terms of what people are talking about. Now, back to my earlier point, right? The big question that the team asked when I arrived was, why are we here? We, as 40 people, we cost a hell of a lot of money, okay? So the one thing that I said to my team when I joined was, let's be really clear why we're here. Because we have to fight the competition. And everyone looked at me in this kind of really weird way and said, I don't understand who the competition are. Well, either we get outsourced or they kill us, right? Because realistically, we are one line. L&D is one line, right? It's really easy to wipe through. So we really have to be clear, why are we here? And we're here to solve business problems. That is it, right? How we do it, what technology we use, they don't care, right? They just want a business problem. They don't care if it's instructor-led. They don't care if it's blended. They want a mixture that will help them solve their problem. So one thing that always comes up is, how are you going to measure success? If one more person says ROI to me, I think I'm going to scream. Because in many different ways, right, when you ask this question, right, it may be a particular issue. We want to sell more to CXOs. We want to have less network downtime. We want to solve some of the cybersecurity issues we've got. We want to solve X, Y, and Z. It doesn't necessarily have to be ROI. It could be ROE. It could be a number of things. But we have learnt, as long as we please our customer, and as long as we're clear as to why we're here and what we're trying to do, and we do everything for them, and then we revisit and revisit, then they'll be happy. And surprise, surprise, happier people don't put lines through investments, okay? So, this is something that we're all facing. What skills do we all need? Okay? If I had the answer to this question, I would be incredibly rich, right? What you do need is you need the skills at a particular point in time that will help you consult with your business and deal with the majority of the things that they need. We have a mixture of teams facing into each of the directorates. What you need is, you definitely need consultants that can understand what they're going to ask for, and actually whether it is a learning need, is it a cultural need, is it a communication issue? And then you will have a team, and you'll see by the reduction of numbers, our capability internally has become less and less, okay? Our digital capability to build systems, design mobile learning has become more and more, right? But it's really hard to work out what you have inside and what you have outside. And it is a balance. There is no silver bullet, right? But the interesting thing you have to work out, back to your structure, is what do you need to invest in? Now, by actually investing in 4 job roles, surprise, surprise, you actually then have communities, right? It doesn't matter which area of the business they work in. You have communities you can invest in. A learning partner needs good consultancy skills, needs the ability to say no, needs the ability to ask the right question to work out what we're solving. Consultants need to understand how they do storyboarding, right? So for me, it's a kind of the skills come down to the structure that you build, and don't make this too complicated, because you'll spend half of your time investing in skills that actually the business doesn't actually want. So explain the journey you're going to go on. When I started, let's just say I was a bit of a shock to the system for both O2, HR, right? But I knew what I wanted to do, right? The term that I've used a lot, and my team are smiling, is I use that you're on the bus or you're not on the bus. That is the colour of my bus. That is how fast it's going to go. This is the direction. You have three options. You get on, you get off, or you'll fall off, or you can decide at any point in time that you may want to get off. I'll help you get off, but for me, you have to explain the journey. If you don't explain the journey, people will get really confused as to what your expectations of them are, right? We're going to have learning partners, consultants, you're going to interface with the business. If that's not a role you want to do, stick your hand up right now, right? And then we will find you another job across O2. So you have to explain your journey really, really clearly. This is something I'm incredibly passionate about. At Microsoft and all the other companies I've worked, very face-to-face companies. O2 is the most mobile-centric company, surprise, surprise. But I started the first 6 kind of months of my career on the phone. I felt pretty lonely, right? And actually what you realize is that to build a team, you need to get your team together face-to-face, right? Because that's how you reach a decision, that's how you get creativity, right? I say this to a lot of people. Has anyone been on a conference call where anyone made a decision? No. Because what actually happens is no one can make a decision because everyone wants consensus, right? So if you want to drive action, speed, you have to do it face-to-face. Everyone says to me, you can't afford to do it. I can't afford not to do it, right? Because we have enforced and driven so much change by spending the effort and the investment on getting face-to-face. Understand what people think, understand how they're enjoying the journey or enduring the journey, but face-to-face communication is key. We have lost sight of this, right? You don't ring your other half from your front room, right, and ask her if you can have some ketchup. Right? You go and you speak and you do face-to-face, because that's how you build rapport, that's how you build trust, etc. Right? So please don't lose sight of this. Now, clarity is the most important thing in all of this. Right? I saw this earlier in another speech, right? Now, I don't know if anyone's seen this, but don't bother. And do you know why? Right? It's fascinating, but it's of no interest to us at all. Because, to be honest with you, I'm not dealing with the learner, right? I'm dealing with the business, and I'm dealing with solving business problems. I can't do anything about Freddie, whether he likes to learn. We will give a variety of learning options for people to help. It'll be online, it'll be face-to-face, it'll be supported learning, right? But don't let your teams be distracted by all the noise that is going on in the market about the learner. They've got to work out how they're going to say no, and how they're going to solve some of the business problems with the finite resources that they have. Now, when I joined, strategy is probably the most overused term in this entire planet, right? Everyone would say, what's our strategy, Paul? Where are we going? Where's the 2-year plan, 3-year plan, 4-year plan, 5-year plan? So I had to point out to everyone what actually strategy meant. It's a plan. All you want to know is, where are we going and what are we going to do? Now, I use 2 principles, right, that my team laugh at, right, about when I'm designing anything. Anyone in here heard of the KISS principle? Hands up. Right. Now, dealing with millennials, they've never heard this term before, right? So when I did this to my team, about 3 hands went up. Because what I was trying to explain is, don't overcomplicate the complicated, right? We already live in a really complicated world, right? Don't overcomplicate something and actually try and explain. Just keep it really simple. I have a philosophy, if my 12-year-old doesn't understand what I'm doing at work, I don't stand a chance. Because then my team won't understand me, and then the business won't understand me, and then the business won't actually understand the value that we're trying to bring to the overall business. Now, this is actually a slide that we as a team created, just to give you an idea that last year, we supported the business. This year, we're going to drive the business, right? It's a subtle change, but the 2 important elements that we have focused on from the start of this exercise is, for a lot of people, really boring, right? Not very exciting, but really important. We have to get better at operational excellence, and we have to get better at continuous improvement, right? Because forget all the fancy schmancy technology. If you don't get the fundamentals right, this thing is going to fall apart pretty quickly, okay? So what I did also is you can probably tell, I'm fairly honest, right? Anyone is confused after speaking to me, then clearly I haven't done something right, but you have to explain your expectations of a leader. The top left image is work-life balance. When I started, a lot of people, right, were emailing on from holiday, right? But that's not something that I like, and I'm not very happy. Holiday is called holiday for a reason. It's so you can spend time out of work and actually energy. You know, I want people to have fun, but I also want people to understand what drives me. Ethics, innovation, speed, etc. Now, the top right and the bottom right, is areas that are important to me. There is never, you know, a right way to do things, right? And also, it's fine to make mistakes. I came into a culture where it wasn't okay to make mistakes. I'm not saying it's okay to make the same mistake over and over again, right? But as long as you learn by the mistakes, then you can do innovation, and then you can drive things forward, and then you can actually have fun, right? But it's the balance in terms of actually explaining what is right and what is wrong, and obviously the bottom left-hand corner is the favorite image I have, which is around the bus. Now, how do we get more efficient, right? Basically, this is around review, implement, review, implement, review, implement, review, right? It's just a standard rhythm that we go through, right? And it's just about business practice. Now, the one thing that we have done back to the face-to-face, we have monthly meetings as a leadership team for 2 days. We have a quarterly offsite for all of my team face-to-face all the time, right? We are building communities and investing in communities. We've invested in the digital learning consultants. We've invested in the specialists. We've invested in the learning partners, right? Because if you're going to make someone a learning partner, you then have to invest in helping them gain the skills that they may not have, that they need, and actually continuing that journey forward. So one thing through this, and I've heard it all through this conference, is we need to drive innovation. I completely agree. However, it has to be balanced innovation, okay? Because you can't stop doing what you do today, can't stop driving value, because otherwise you'll actually get distracted. So some of the things that we've done is, I don't know if any of you attended Ashley's presentation. So this is our mobile app that we've done for the millennials. This is the intranet that we've done for our business. Because we were a distributed team, all the intranets look the same. So we've driven a commonality, right, across all of it. We've then invested recently in a learning content management system. So we're trying to drive innovation and trying to add on innovation without ripping everything out and starting again, because that's just not achievable with the pace and the amount of information that people want from us and the service that they want. Now, the final one is Linda. Hands up, anyone in this room that has heard of Linda? So this is quite a transformational cultural change for us. We invested in Linda just under a year ago, and basically we knew that we didn't have the resources or the curriculum to be able to offer 7,500 people. But we also knew the view of people and learning is we have a lot of compliance learning, right? A lot. 7.5 hours to be precise, right? And then it drives, L&D learning is a negative element. So one thing we were really keen to do was change the face and the image of learning. It starts investing in the individuals within the organization around personal development. We invested in Linda, we rolled it out directorate by directorate, okay? This is a new colleague, this is Linda, it's an amazing resource for you. And the amount of amazing feedback we've had is that's great that I can do anything, I can look at on the tablet and the phone. You start to think about me just as a person, not only as a person that's selling or has to do compliance. And now we're starting to use Linda within our existing curriculums that we roll out to directorates, where you can now do playlists, right? For example, you can do leadership or set areas where you start to do playlists and use the actual resources as part of your overall delivery and as part of your curriculum, because it's got really good, for example, data. So don't lose sight of innovation. Now, finally, you have to be a slave to the rhythm. My team, right, some of them are sitting here, right, you've got to just keep on going. Do the same things and refine, but just keep on doing them and doing them. Because one thing that we're all very good at is actually losing sight or not having a monthly meeting or not having a quarterly meeting. The minute you do that, you have lost your rhythm, you lose your pace, you lose your ability to make fast, quick changes, as you say to the business. And then finally, being in an organization that has been around for a long time, you have a lot of people that have been in the business for many years. And my advice to any of you in that situation is, one of the things that I struggle with, and actually in changing an organisation, is you have to split what a lovely person someone is and the capability they need for the new world, right? So we have made some dramatic changes and some tough decisions because the people that we had may not have been the people that actually we needed for the future, but some of those people didn't want to be in the future. They wanted to stay where they were, which is fine. However, right, attitude, aptitude, right, and want and need and desire and passion for the future has to be there. They may be a lovely person, but you have to make that segregation, and it is very hard. But that is my advice when you're making dramatic change and actually having to go from 70-odd people down to 40. So that is me, and I will now pass over to Zoe to talk to you about how you move skills from X to Y.
Okay, so I'm going to take you through the journey that I underwent with my team, just a small team of 2, and that was moving from us being classroom-based systems trainers to actual e-learning and other online delivery methods. So to give you a bit of context as to how all this came about, roughly 2 years ago now, I used to work for a company called Bluefin Corporate Consulting, and then we were bought by Capita and merged into one organisation. So amidst the whole change of bringing together a new organisation, it brought together a completely new learning and development team with quite a disparate skill set. I then inherited 2 team members who, as I say before, had absolutely no experience whatsoever in delivering online. About a month after, one of my lovely classroom trainers then came up to me and was like, I'm pregnant. So not only did I have just one team member, I also then needed to recruit. And since it was just for a year, we thought actually it's a good opportunity to give someone a skills base. So we took on a placement student who not only had no experience in designing e-learning, she actually had no experience whatsoever in learning and development. So it just made the challenge a little bit harder. So before I tell you about what we actually did and the journey we underwent, I thought it was important to just include really a little bit about the kind of feelings of the team at the time. So obviously my new placement student, very excited to get started, was really on board with everything. It's the job that she signed up for. However, my classroom trainer, not so much so. That wasn't the job that he signed up for. It wasn't what he'd expected to do when he started in the role 5 years previously. And so on preparing for this, I did check back with him to make sure my memory of the situation was correct. But he said he just felt like he didn't have a clue what he was going to do, how he could ever take what he knew into an online delivery. He was obviously apprehensive because as classroom trainers, we love to be adored by our public. We love to build up those relationships. And if I was going to be sat at a computer all day, where was that interaction going to come from? So there was that apprehension before we got started. And as well, we came from somewhat of an old-fashioned business, shall I say. So there was definitely a worry about how the business was going to receive this change that we were going to undergo as well. So the approach we took, as L&D people, we said, right, we've got a new skill set to learn. So of course we thought, let's go and find a classroom course to solve that. But then when we sat back and thought about it, we thought actually, okay, that's fine. We could go on a day's training, but really we didn't have the time to kind of take that day, go away. And although failure is important, as Paul was saying, we didn't have the time to really fail and then, reiterate and reiterate because we needed to deliver now. So what we actually did is we partnered with a content development organisation, and they helped us to both build e-learning as well as teach us how to do it along the way. So we took 6 courses, 3 that were very much systems based and 3 that were based in pensions knowledge. And to focus and accelerate the learning, one of my designers focused on the systems courses and one of them focused on the pensions knowledge courses. So we did a 3-stage process. The first stage was very much the expert content partners. They built and we basically sat and watched. Then we moved on to stage 2, where we did the course outline stage, we did a bit of the storyboarding, and then we handed over to our partners to build the majority of it, but then we got to have a little play and to fill in some bits that they'd left for us. Now, you might be thinking, hang on a second, how can you go from just watching to then, you know, being able to create a full storyboard and to do that course outline section? So we didn't completely just go, okay, we'll watch. What we did between stages 1 and 2 was that we did take them into a formal classroom setting, because we all know it still has its place. But having been through stage 1 and done the watching, they could sort of see what was going to happen. And then also, when they went into that classroom setting, they had a little bit of background and then were starting to underpin that knowledge with the formal models. So then when we came to stage 2, they had a bit of experience from watching, then the formal principles, and they felt a lot more confident and ready to start giving it a go themselves. So moving on to stage 3 then. Stage 3 is where we really took the onus, and we pretty much were responsible for the majority of the build, with our content partners then helping to finesse and to guide and just to finish off that development. And again, between stages 2 and 3, we had an additional day of formal training on the storyline tool. So why did we decide to do it that way? I think time is often cited as a reason really for people in our business not to do learning and development. And again, we too were time starved, but doing it this way, it meant that we actually got to work on real business projects. So we weren't just spending that time learning new skills. While we were doing the skills, we were actually working on the courses that we needed to develop to and release to the business. So I think that was the easiest and the best way to do it for us, so that we delivered as well as building our skills. When I was asked to speak at this conference, I first thought about all the technical things that I've just talked to you about, that how we went stage by stage of building the skills. But it wasn't until I actually reflected on our journey that I realised that, yes, it was great, that was a wonderful skill set that we built there, but that's not really what made it successful in the business. It's wonderful as having nicely built courses, engaging courses, but if you can't sell it to the business or get the engagement of the business to even want to move to online, you're pretty stuffed anyway. So along the way, even though we didn't set out to develop them, I think that the most important thing that we learnt was how to communicate with the rest of our business and how to develop those relationships to actually understand what the challenges of our learners were, also to understand what the apprehensions of the managers were, and then to really get them to see that what we were doing was going to benefit them, that we were on their side, and that they were partners with us and that we really wanted to work with them. So I think it's been incredibly important, and we wouldn't have got the buy-in at all if we hadn't taken that time to then think about how we communicated and how we put those messages across to our audience. The other skill that we learned was actually project management. And I don't think until we started to build that we realised actually building an e-learning course isn't just a case of, okay, I'm going to sit here all by myself and I'm going to do it in complete isolation. There are so many other things and so many other people involved. So I think, again, if this is a journey that you're thinking about going on, then I think that's an important skill that your teams will need as well. Also, alongside our e-learning, we've started to use video. So we've sort of learnt a bit of a few side skills in script writing, and also have some great voiceover people in my team now. So if you need any help on that, we're more than willing to come by. So the key business results for that then. So I now have 2 fully fledged developers that can help the business to learn in a new way. We became e-learning team of the year at the 2014 e-learning awards. And for the actual business itself, because we've now managed to develop to take some of our classroom offering and turn that into e-learning in-house through this programme, that's led to an annual saving of £40,000 a year just on taking that content and delivering it online, as well as roughly 2,000 delegate and trainer hours. So I started off a little bit under the context about how the team felt at the beginning of the journey. And that was a bit of the apprehension, a bit of enjoying that face-to-face contact. So just as I was finishing preparing for this presentation, I went back to the team and I said, well, how do you feel now? And I quote, "We are very proud of the achievement. We've added new strings to our bow, and it's made us a lot less hesitant to take on new things in the future. And even though we were worried about not having that contact with the business, actually through building e-learning and partnering more with the business, we're actually out there making a lot more relationships." Thank you.
You know, that's old school presentation. When I did my presentations at school, does anybody do presentations at school these days? It was always on index cards and you had to stand up and talk in front of people. There's nothing to hide behind. It's great. Thank you very much, Zoe. Right, we've got 10 minutes and I'd like to look at, first I want to thank Paul and Zoe there. Paul's had a relentless focus there on business, results, on the attitude you need and how you build your culture in your team. So that's the big picture of building your team. And of course, Zoe, I think, looking marvellously telling the story, not just about the initial skill, classroom to online, but then also looking at the ancillary skills that come with it, the consulting skills, project management skills that come as a result. And of course, you'll probably build those out more formally as well in the future. Do we have any questions for Paul and Zoe now, or... Okay, we have. Okay, in which case, Paul and Zoe, can you stand up and let's have some questions, and then I'd like to ask that final question, which I'm going to put back up on here so that we've got it in your minds, because what I want to do is finish off with 2 or 3 minutes of conversation between you guys as we get ourselves to answer through conversation with us and perhaps through asking questions to these two guys that will enable us to do it. That's a bit like Back to the Future, isn't it? There we go. How are you going to develop the skills you need? All right, so sorry, you had a question for one of these two marvellous people.
Yes.
The question is that many people, particularly in the IT or in technical fields, want the training as part of the job. Is that right? It's a perk, it's an essential part of the job, they get value from it. And what's the question exactly?
So I wonder if that came across as reflection to him, because this is a paradigm shift.
Yeah, so it depends which area you work in. So it's a very big IT thing. You know, project management, ITIL, you know, you name it, everyone wants to do everything in that area because it's a very competitive area and they want the highest level of skill. So basically, we consult with the business as to what they want. They make the decisions. So the way that we partner with, they have business managers in each of the areas and we partner with their HR business partner to define the need and actually what's important. IT is very different because there aren't many reactionary skills, they're more kind of proactive, and then, you know, then you have how do you move from networking to IT and how do you move to service management, etc. So they're quite unique. There are situations like that, but we don't deal with them. They come to us and say, we have a broad need for service management, ITIL, you know, TOGAF, whatever it may be. Here's the audience and do it. The biggest problem we have in IT is everyone wants to do it face to face. You know, everyone wants to do, you know, IP training, network training. The biggest barrier to IT is digital learning. So one thing that we've been working on is how do you distribute, for example, digital learning in the IT sense around networking and some of the generic topics. Because the IT organisation would prefer to do generic than specific, because they feel that the audience needs to know more. So there are some some instances like that, but they're fewer and far between. But actually, what they're more interested in is our ops department is 8 different businesses, and actually they want to invest as one and actually distribute good online learning. And actually, the biggest challenge for all of us is to find it first. There's a lot of stuff out there.
Well, while we're on this, does anybody else have this business of people really wanting training, face-to-face training as a perk, or it's an important part of the job, and manage to overcome it with people, change their attitudes? No? All right. Okay, so do we have any other questions for Paul and for Zoe?
So during the course of the program I was describing, so we did 3 courses on an in-house system, and then another 3 specifically around, basically it was quite dull actually, the introduction to UK pensions.
No, but to be fair, you know, we often hear a lot of very jazzy stuff. That's the sort of stuff which most people would loathe having to produce, and yet you've done a good job producing, haven't you? And you've got great results out of it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think with our pension series, it worked really well because as part of that particular package, we also bookended it with a video series. Because it is for new people coming in as well, and it's a bit cold sometimes if you just shove them in front of a computer.
So you're in the position of having a vendor that you could get to train your people, which I think is a very creative way of getting somebody else to take the burden. It's quite clever. Yeah. What if somebody didn't have a vendor? Or actually, let's say they've got a vendor, but they haven't got a particular project they're working on. You had a project you wanted to work on. Mm-hmm. What would you do? So
if we didn't have the specific...
You've got a vendor, but you've not necessarily got a particular project to work on. I mean, would you create one, or would you start? Where would you start?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would probably look for something specific to work around, because, as I say, one of the key things for us was that it wasn't just time out as developing the skills, waiting for us to use them in the future. It was developing something we needed to release to the business at that time. So it saved us on time of both learning the skills and getting something out there to the business.
And there's a real sense of achievement when you work on something that's actually going to be used. And
yes,
of course, definitely. You're really focused on the job. I think I saw another hand go up. Did I see another hand go up? No? Good. In which case, I'm going to ask you, of course. You know, there's no escape from the question. I'm going to ask you the question now. Finally, thanks, guys. Thank you very much. I'm going to ask you this question now. We've had a look at, I think, relentless business attitude and focus and how you're going to get your culture right in your team. Very specific idea of, well, we're going to develop our skills on the job by working on specific projects. You get your skill developed and you have the ancillary skills developed as well. Yes, classroom and 2 online, but also this business of developing the project management and also some of the consulting skills alongside it. Right. That's, I think, quite a good, the idea is deliberately to put together a sort of combination of things that have happened. What I'd like to ask you now, everyone's different. I said at the beginning, the map is not the territory. The context is different for everybody. We haven't got the answer yet, or I would encourage you, and I'll ask you again right at the end to do this, to network, to help build the answer to your questions together. What I'd like to do is just have a quick chat with the person next to you, and I'm not going to ask for feedback on this. This is for you to take home. What thoughts have you got now? If we've managed to stimulate something here or in the rest of the conference, what can you do to start working on the skills for your team for the future? So just now give us probably 2 minutes of conversation before we finally wrap up. What are you going to do next? I have actually broken more than one glass in the past doing this when I've had a very noisy crowd, but I was very careful that time. I'm not going to ask anybody for feedback or put anybody on the spot, but does anybody have anything they want to share as a result of that conversation? Anything that might be useful for everybody else? Or is it just a sense of feeling that, you know what, there's a beer 1 minute away and it sounds really good? There are 2 things I want to say. Firstly, very importantly, Zoe did a lot of preparation for this. She produced a whole presentation that was around baking, and she didn't use any of that, which is sad because part of the thing she prepared for this was some really delicious Jamaican ginger cake. And look, she's got a whole tub of it there, and I'm not going to bite it because I've got something else to say, but I've got to tell you, I'm finding it very difficult to stop myself biting, and that is good. So come on down and share the goodness at the end. The other thing I wanted to say was, right at the end of the first question session, we have this business about comfortable. It's very easy for us to be comfortable, to do the stuff we enjoy doing. And I do feel that we tend to fall into it, do the stuff we enjoy doing in L&D and keep doing it. And Paul, you put up the big burst-in slide about all the things about the brain. We love getting involved in the nitty-gritty. The Hillman Hunter. You may have heard the story before. No regrets about saying it again. When I was young, I was 18, I bought my first car. It cost me £600. It was a lot of money in those days. It was a long time ago. It was an old Hillman Hunter car, and it wasn't very good, let's be honest, but it was my pride and joy. Every time I went out on a journey of any size, I would make sure the tyres were pumped up, I'd open up the bonnet, I'd get under the hood, I'd check everything, the battery, I'd check here, check there, get the spark plugs out. You're probably, most of you too young to remember this, but you get what a spark plug is. You get the spark plugs out, file them down, make sure the gap is just right, you put them back in, clean the hands with Swarfiger. It smelt fantastic. Of course, now I've got a Volvo. Open up the bonnet. I mean, the thing's immaculate, it never rusts. It's completely safe. You open up the bonnet, and there are 2 big arrows saying, you can touch this, the oil, and you can touch this, the water. Don't touch anything else. And that's probably about right. There are so many things that we can do these days in L&D that actually we can get other people to do. We can get YouTube to do it. We can get people outside to do it. We don't have to do it ourselves. We do love getting our hands dirty and making things, but that's where we're comfortable. And I do feel we need to step away from it. Maybe we top up the water, and then we put the bonnet down, and perhaps we get in the passenger seat of the car, we get the map out, we start navigating, taking some strategy, helping the business get to where it wants to get to with clean hands, even if it's a bit uncomfortable, saying no. No, don't turn left, turn right. This is where you want to go. Perhaps we help people out that way, rather than getting ourselves involved in our comfort zone where we don't need to. There's a lot we can learn here, and I think this business of being uncomfortable is quite good. We feel uncomfortable listening to Paul. I don't want to be that focused on the business. Maybe we should. Feel uncomfortable listening to Zoe. My goodness, am I going to try and develop my skills on the job rather than getting somebody to a course and then bring them out? Actually, it both works. Let's keep together. This is the end of the presentation, but let's hope it's the beginning of a conversation. We've got the learning and skills group. There are other ways. Let's stay in touch and make sure that we're helping each other build our skills for our teams for the future. Enjoy the drinks we're about to have, and I hope we can see you online and next year. Thank you very much.